Hi, I'm Keith Marchiano, Senior Executive Coach at Paxade Academy, and welcome to Results Selling Framework Podcast. We're going to talk about leadership today, specifically sales leadership. Being a leader is tough, and it's a learned skill. Back in my days when I was playing baseball, as a player, I could focus on development of my skills to improve the results as a player, what I need to do to be better at the sport. When I became a coach, I could reflect back on my experiences, but I couldn't be in the batter's box. I had to teach those skills, and every player is different. This is the same in leadership, especially sales leadership. MSPs, the owner starts out running the company and is primarily responsible for finding new business. You are the salesperson. Then one day you decide to hire a salesperson, but we forget, hey, you're now the sales manager, right? You need to help that salesperson and eventually hire a sales team and help them all become more successful. Today we're going to touch on some of the things to become that better sales leader. Welcome back to Results Selling Framework Podcast. I am honored and privileged to welcome in Sara Ehrich to the program. Sara, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Glad you can be here and share your wealth of knowledge to all of our listeners. Look, you have a lot of experience in creating documentation and process in your career, leading people, setting processes around leading departments. On that side, why don't you tell the listeners who you are, your role, your background, experiences, and don't forget that one fun fact.
Yeah, so my name's Sara Ehrich. I came as a former owner of an MSP. I was in there for about 15 years and got to really experience a wide variety. I'm not from a technical background, so I was operations that, I started off just as office manager and doing the financial support and running HR and continued to get my hands into all the things, service manager, I was dispatcher, I was then leading marketing and started beginning to leading the teams and eventually worked all the way up to chief operations officer. And one of my last really departments that I spent a lot of time in was both account management and the sales and marketing. Those were my two last really to get very firm before I exited. And sales was a really fun time for me. I enjoyed working, very different than building a service team for sure. But
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was a challenge in that transition, right? Because I was so used to operations in a different way. But that's where I come from. I'm from Texas, so you'll hear a lot about that in my slang and what I use in my jargon. My fun fact for you, Keith, is actually I was a catcher all through high school in my childhood, and I was a catcher because I was very influenced by my dad, who was actually in the minor leagues as a catcher. So baseball
Ah,
runs very deep in our family, um, and so I actually really get a little kick out of the pitches and all that stuff in baseball talk.
that's right. Yeah. That's awesome. So, do you remember what affiliate your dad played for?
No, I remember he was in Iowa at the time. He did a whole array of things trying to work his way through college, and that was like right at the very beginning of it. So I know he didn't play long, but he was a very good catcher.
That's awesome. Love
Hmm.
to pick his brain a little bit. I've got some friends that played in the minor leagues. It's pretty cool talking to them. So,
Yep.
catcher, did you play baseball or softball?
Softball. Yeah,
Softball.
they didn't do the co-ed thing back when I was younger, but so no, it was a softball, and really enjoyed it. I tried first base, third base, all those things, and then when I sat in catcher, I was like, oh, this is it. I get to see the whole field. I get to call some plays out. I get to rally the team when needed. It was definitely my vibe.
That's awesome. So, yeah, a little affection for the catchers out there. My daughter and my wife, both catchers playing in softball as well. So, right there and right
Wow.
there, I know you're a badass right out of the gate. So,
I feel like I'm in liked company. There you go.
yeah, yeah, it's a pretty you know it's a very hard position. All that gear on in the heat, but man, you talk about leadership. Catcher in softball is the leader on that field. That's incredible.
Yep. That's right. Not to mention we got all the parents in the back of our heads yelling at us too, so we get all of the
Oh, I
all
bet you that was a lot of fun.
a lot of focused attention.
Oh boy, you can walk back and say, "Now, who said that?"
Yeah. Right. Right.
All right, so let's get back. Let's kind of get in the swing of things. So thanks for that background. That's awesome. Um, like I said, and you mentioned in your intro, you got a lot of experience, like in the IT services world around process and documentation and career. So what is like the right documentation when it comes to a sales department and kind of the importance around sales playbooks, things like that? Can you kind of dive into that from your background and knowledge?
Yeah, so for me, there's so much of documentation that can exist to give empower our salespeople. So one of the first elements that we did was building up a sales playbook, which gave not only the power of people coming fresh into sometimes an MSP space or just back into our company and how we do things. It allows them to have some stories, have some information, have some identity as to who we're trying to sell to. So the biggest things that we picked out and put into our playbook is our target client audience, of course, and who we're trying to sell to, the personas that we might be engaging with, and how we have really aligned our marketing efforts alongside of them. We also went really big into the playbook about pulling stories from our service team of how we've impacted clients in a positive way so that we're armoring them with some of this knowledge that an owner, by the way, would have. An owner would know these things going into a client or a prospective client saying, hey, this is how we've really impacted and changed other people that have used our services. And so we're basically just trying to create a playbook to allow that kind of knowledge to be transferred very quickly over to a potential salesperson. Anything else that would be going into that kind of, so what kind of differentiates us in the market? We also did spend a lot of time going into what they might see at, or barriers or blockers that the prospective client might be bringing up, but we didn't necessarily say and how you identify or address that specific issue. We would more say about how to bringing it back to relational. What have we lost in that room for them to be asking that question? And how do we get it back to the value of an MSP in general? Um, so those were the things that we really focused on in building up our documentation for our sales before we came in. And I don't know if you want to get into the other of how we played that out with the actual salesperson yet, but there was a whole identity about how we see that live with a salesperson.
Yeah, jump into it. I want to hear more about this sales playbook. This is great stuff.
Okay, so we would definitely dive into a salesperson and seeing them play it out. Role playing with these types of was a very big thing for us, which is, by the way, super awkward for me in an operations world. I am not that brain that can just start playing a different person, but I was, and one thing that I'll speak to all operations people out there, I was what they identified as a key persona that they would try to influence into a room. Generally, when we were selling, we were trying to sell to a certain growth stage, which happened to be that they would have a COO or an operations person around. So me being kind of a tough sell was actually very beneficial for those role-playing scenarios because they were selling to personas like mine, which can be very difficult in a sales room. We're the fact checkers. It's not super fun for salespeople. So I actually kind of was able to find a way that I really embraced role playing because I was a tough sell for them. And so I was a good practice room. Anyways, we played all those out into how this would look for our salespeople, what we would see them doing in behavior to getting those results that we wanted into a room. This goes really deep into conversion metrics and seeing what they're doing. Because at the end of the day, what we really want is sold clients, right? We want new
Revenue.
clients, right? We want new clients, but that means that we also want first time appointments, right? And that means that we also want other things to be happening. And I always said to them, my biggest thing was first time appointments and new revenue. The rest of it, if you're doing those two, I'm not going to worry about the rest of it. The rest of it is for us to talk, is to engage. But I'm going to be watching them just to say that we're doing something so that we have something to lean back on if we're not getting those first time appointments, and we can have a bigger discussion as to what else can we be doing within our activities to be getting there. And that's how we would track them as an activities.
That is phenomenal. It sounds like you're listening in on a lot of my coaching sessions with owners. Holy smokes. The the things that you said in there, first time appointments, revenue. Guess what a salesperson can't do with that data? Like they can't make it up.
Yeah.
It's you it's either there or it's not, right? All the like you said, all the other stuff, you know, kind of, makes a salesperson know, hey, we are kind of keeping an eye on this, but really at the end of the day, I don't care if you're what you're doing. Now, realistically, we do want to improve the sales skills for sure, but yeah, for the most part, it's like, hey, let's take a look at what they're doing. Like, who are they meeting with? Who are they talking to? What's the conversation like? What's the next steps for this opportunity? And I love the fact around role playing in house with your salesperson or salespeople in house. And the last part you mentioned is never thought of this, but fantastic. Why not bring somebody that's in operations? That's who we're dealing with most of the time is
Mhm.
office manager, operations manager on that first appointment. So why not have our own operations people involved in that role play? It's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just how I got to embrace it. I will say, as an operations side, one side that I felt limited personally in is instilling the energy that salespeople need. I felt that I was very limited at really getting the hype up and the excitement over it because that's just not how I particularly like function. So, really encouraging my salespeople to join outside efforts. One might say like peer groups, but for us, there was local meetups and stuff where they would identify what they were doing, kind of some things that they've seen gain traction. Was really important for us to get external resources to help us out because salespeople really do. They need the wins, they need the victories, they need the place to share the excitement. We did try to transfer that over to our service team by having, hey, when we have new appointments set, when we have sales, we're celebrating as a team. We're excited about it. We're embracing it. Um, and because at the beginning, I can tell you, just because of our history, there became this like, oh, a new cell, great. What's gonna get transferred over now, right? Like, what kind of chaos are we walking into? And we had to really intentionally switch over our messaging as to new revenue that was coming in so that we could celebrate it as a team, and that the salesperson wasn't being met with immediate kind of here we go. Right, we really had to work on that messaging across the board.
Right. Oh, great. More work. That's what I wanted, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I love that celebrating together, right? Creating this sales culture piece, right?
Yeah.
That's you know, bringing salespeople into an organization and making them feel part of the team on that side. So I love the fact that your company did that. I try to coach that, some old school methods. We used to have a bell in our office,
Oh.
and when the salesperson brought in a new opportunity, the bell was rung by my service manager
Oh, I
for that
like
exact
that.
same reason, right? Because
Yeah.
it was like, hey, we brought a salesperson here to grow and to provide additional opportunities for our operation side of the house. So great
Yeah.
stuff. You kind of mentioned it, like around development and training of
Mhm.
salespeople. When it comes to leading salespeople, what should a sales manager or if it's the owner of the company who's in that role and they have no physical sales manager, right? That's them. What are some tips that you would have for them to manage, develop, and lead salespeople?
Yeah, I actually feel like like you almost have to have all three in mind at the same time. And the reason just being is I can manage the things that they're doing, right? I can say, are they making the steps to hit this certain goal? But um it's not usually the things. It's not usually the little things outside of revenue and appointments. It's more a discovery of what's working. Because by the way, our marketing and how we're marketing goes to it. How our target client audience. It's more of a dance of an entire department than it is one set on one person's performance. There are certain places, so those first time appointments moving into the other stages of sales and getting those first time, that's why they're so important. So in developing, I really had to pull on external resources for the functionality of it. So we had gotten a sales consultant that helped me really understand, first of all, just how much effort and like trial and error has to go into finding messaging within everything that you're doing, right? So those emails that you're sending out, those getting in front of those LinkedIn contacts and how we're reaching and going across them. And also just really evaluating all of our sales content, our deliverables that we have, and making sure that it all is resounding sound. That's why for me that the development of them, they need to be also getting external resources or external excitement, energy, idea functionings, because it's just a continual, let's try this, let's try this, let's try this. Like it's seeing what's working and what doesn't work, right? And that takes an energy and drive. So yes, sales consulting, peer groups, all of those types of things, it just helps us generate and not get stagnant on the ideas that we have and continually trying to run up against that window saying, how about now? How about now? How about now? Right? But continually
Right.
kind of fine tuning that. But when it comes to where you're needing deliverables, someone that's experienced, a experienced a salesperson, they should be able to hit certain expectations. And especially when we get into budgeting purposes, they should having a funnel that's getting formed up after a time period, right, for those deliverable sales. And it is then having those predictive conversations with them. What are you going to sell by when? And having them really get to where they're being accountable for those sales, right? And it takes quite an experienced salesperson to do that. But once they do, that's when all cylinders go on for businesses, right? Once we get those predictive sales in, budgets make a lot more sense. Service teams can function a lot more. Like that is, to me, one of the biggest points of how businesses in general get moving forward in a really consistent way.
Yeah, you mentioned like, you get an experienced salesperson, let's just say 2+ years of B2B sales experience. They should be able to hit the ground running. But you said something earlier in our conversation that is key, and that's the sales playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Like who we are as a company, you know, who we're selling to, what we sell, what's our value to those type of companies, and then what's our sales process, what's our culture, things like that. So what's your experience of seeing organizations that don't have those foundations in play? Are you seeing, talk
Yeah.
about that before you got the sales playbook?
Yeah. So one of the things that you just triggered from one of my online courses is, or instructor-led courses, is that you can't out deliver a bad sale.
Hmm.
And that is one of those moments where a salesperson goes in and starts either making promises to make the sale or isn't fine-tuned on what we do offer and might instill just little nuances to how we do things that the client was really like that was their sale. Like that was the moment that made them sell, but it wasn't 100% true. These just little ticks. And really that contract has no hope at the end of it,
Mm.
right? So that sales playbook can go down even to this is what a service contract is going to look for them. This is how they're going to get help. This is how that help's going to look. One of the key ones that I hear all the time is that time to response one, right? Where they're like, oh, well, you're going to get a live tech right away every time. But they're not saying, and then it goes through a triage process. So we're going to handle you if it's an urgent and priority situation, but others are going to get into the triaging process, right? So it's those kind of things that over promising can actually tank the longevity of a contract. And in MSP world, it's about the longevity of the contract. It's about how long we can keep those clients, not about that initial sale. So really kind of finding those moments in the playbook to bring out those issues that might come up, and then saying the real response that we want to get to, right? The real answer, not just the answer that's going to get them to the next step of the sales process.
Love that. My experience, and this might be resonate with some people out there, like in the MSP world, my first sales hire, most of the playbook was up here, right? Because I'd been selling it for so long, and the salesperson had no direction. He was a machine. He was like he had the drive and the work ethic, very good in front of clients, in front of prospects, but no direction. And it was just like, coming back with opportunities that were too small or too big. And it was like, it's a letdown to that salesperson. They felt like, boy, what do I need to do around here to get, what's the perfect sale? It sounds like I have to be perfect, which they don't. They just have to be in a zone, right?
So I think that so many owners are nervous to really identify and fine tune that target client audience because they've been in this world where a sale is a sale, and sometimes we just need revenue. But but really, what I found, what you just said, is just fine tuning it for them is actually very encouraging for salespeople, because now they have a path, right? Now they have clarity as to what you're really looking for. Not that they might not suggest others, but when they get that clarity, like they start looking, where do these people hang out? Where do I need to start hanging out? What are they really looking for in an MSP themselves, so that when I'm speaking to them, I can fine tune it so that when I'm speaking to them, it's like I'm speaking their love language in that room. And that's really where they can be gaining so much energy. So you're doing such a big kindness to your sales team. And that seems weird because you feel like you're taking away opportunity, right? But you're not. You're providing such clarity. Everybody needs IT. We don't need the whole world to take us, but giving that clarity for that tunnel.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, a few things that I try to coach around, especially owners that are getting thrusted into this sales leadership role now, is like, hey, this is another member of your team, right? Get to know them, who they are as a person. How can you help them, right? Then you can dive into, hey, are they hitting their KPIs and sales targets? Why or why not? Educating them, providing them resources for education, like you mentioned. What's working, what isn't, right? Sales, to your point, if you hired a salesperson, you should have gone through the interview process, and this should be somebody that wants to succeed and has no problem being held accountable, right? They've have experience of having sales targets in their life, and that they're being hired to hit that sales target. And if they're not, they should be ready to handle the questions around, hey, what is holding you back? How can I help you get better? Probably the biggest thing that I coach partners on is when this person comes in, don't just sit behind your desk. Get out there in the field with them, right? Go on meetings with them.
Yes.
Go drive along with them in the car. Get to know who they are as a person, their family life, things like that. Sit in on the meetings. And then when you get back in the car, provide valuable input, right? Hey, what do you think we did well?
Yes.
Get that feedback. What could we have done better?
Yep.
Get that type of feedback. I had a mentor that did that with me. I'll never forget it. It just made me stronger, and obviously I sold more, made him more money,
Yep.
right? And then you mentioned role play, right? Going into that, scenarios for that. It's crazy, but there's AI out there that'll help salespeople do role playing now. So
Oh, I,
pretty
before
pretty
my time.
incredible.
I mean, after my time, I suppose, but that would be pretty incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty inventive. It's just like you're sitting there in front of a prospect, and at the end it gives you feedback on your tone and the questions you ask and all that. So feed your salespeople with ways they can be more successful. That's your job as a sales manager.
Yeah, and I also find that something that you triggered for me was how hard the recruitment process was for me.
Mm,
And honestly, it came from some bad advice that I got very early on, which was, find a salesperson that you can tolerate, which gave me this like very negative, I know, right? Which gave me this very like, okay, I'm not really going to like them, so I'll just find someone that I can tolerate into a room. And I found that to be exact opposite. I found that to be that finding a true salesperson is somebody that I'm going to seek out and honestly engage in their brain and how they think, because they're constantly listening, learning, and digesting and kind of asking really good questions in a moment, right? That's a salesperson's very engaged with you. They're very engaged with understanding you. So I switched my interview process to how many questions they brought me about the direction of our company, about learning how we go and develop. And once I switched that to in my interviewing to understanding like what they should be asking me in a room to understand their role, then I started getting candidates that I
Hmm.
really felt like I could invest in and do the rest of the work with.
Man, salesperson's going to be your eyes and ears in the marketplace, right? They're going to come back with like what the marketplace is saying and help us adjust as an IT provider, right? We,
Hmm.
we want to solicit that information, and but it starts with first and foremost, what's our culture, what's our purpose, and that salesperson understanding it, so that way, they're singing from the same sheet of music we are, but providing that valuable input to our operation side of the house, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's $1 million question. So
Ooh.
besides commissions, you know,
Mm.
how would you energize or motivate a salesperson?
Yeah, this was big about bringing that the whole team celebrating, right? Like they were so like I cannot tell you the amount of energy that came back when we started celebrating as a team certain wins. That was huge. They wanted the recognition in public forums. They wanted to say this is we are now able to do X, Y, and Z because of their contributions, especially in such an operationally driven company, right? With a service team and technology, all those things are very factually backed. And I know this is not only my company because I've heard of it about it so much out there now about just the negativity that can surround sales in general. So really, really pushing the change on that about how our company can only move forward because of these efforts, because they're usually smaller teams within an MSP, right? They're small. There might be just one or two of them, and they get energy off of collaboration, off of like having those conversations. So bringing them in with the other managers and inviting their input into what we're doing, having them saying just what you said, and I didn't even realize I did this, but what are you seeing out in the industry? What are you hearing as to the other offerings that people are asking questions about? Having them be like a very valuable part of the building of what we're moving and growing towards, that to me gained more energy and effort than any commission really could. They wanted to be a part of something, at least mine did.
Man, great ideas rolling through my mind right now with what you just said. Um, when we're hiring and looking for a salesperson, I'm looking for that team player mentality, right? I'll give homage to Patrick Lencioni in his book Ideal Team Player. Talks about humble, hungry, and smart, and hiring that team player, the salesperson, as a team player for the purposes you said. And then when I'm also hiring, I'm asking questions because motivation of salespeople, the commissions, bonuses, trips, whatever we're financially rewarding them, like that's extrinsically motivated salespeople. And the misnomer is the best salespeople are financially focused and hungry, and that is actually inaccurate. The best salespeople are intrinsically motivated. They want the company to succeed. They want to be part of the team. They want to help the company grow. They want to make the owner who's hiring them proud of the hire, that they made the right decision. And the combination of, obviously, look, you're a good salesperson, you're going to sell something, you're definitely going to feel the financial rewards. But the best salespeople, when you look at your A and B salespeople, they are intrinsically motivated. They truly care about the direction of the team. And they're going to go work for the companies that have things in place that are looking at themselves as a sales organization, the sales playbooks you mentioned earlier, they're going to have those in place, and those intrinsically motivated salespeople are going to look for that. And if you don't have it, they're probably not going to stay too long.
Yeah, and in fact, they care about the clients that they're selling to. They want to see them benefit as well, right? So we would have them tailor along with our account managers to do like the holiday gifts and the whatever, just to keep them. And of course, at that time, they would generally be like, "Do you know anybody else that is looking for IT services?" Right? Always kind of feeling out for those referrals. But what they would hear along the way is, "Hey, how are things going with the company? Like, you can tell me, I'm working for you, right?" And they not only let out all that stuff, but it allows the salesperson to really hear what the difference that they're making by connecting them with us, right? That because we are very proud of the services that we offer. We are very proud about being able to help clients in certain ways. And so them seeing that that really came to fruition, really, like, that was just a, I definitely agree with you. You're speaking my language.
All right. So, we kind of mentioned, like, from a standpoint of, being part of the team. We talked about, like, getting them as part of the sales culture. So, with salespeople, how can we utilize their strengths and how can they improve your company?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people don't like this word, but I love it and I embrace it whenever I can. And it's the word of a disruptor. And a lot of people don't appreciate disruptors in a room. They like the room to go as, a meeting to be as functional as possible. But I know we all know those type that every once in a while they speak up and everyone kind of goes, "Oh, well, that was a completely different look that no one ever saw out there coming," right? And that to me, so many times salespeople can provide for us because of the reasons that you've already actually identified. They're out in the industry, they're hearing what's really being asked and what's not, and they allow us to break outside of our echo chamber to hear about what people are asking about. It's
Hmm.
up to the whole team and company to decide whether that's something they're going to really change or harness or bring in. But without those outside perspectives, we can really become a very solid echo chamber of what we feel like is the right way to do everything, right? And we can actually make it to where it doesn't make sense anymore out in the real world because we want it to run so operationally clean, but that's now a hindrance towards our clients. So I believe that they are invaluable for that. I feel like when they come into a room and they're speaking on the behalf of the outside world for us, that we need to perk up and listen. I think overall disruptors get too little credit in any operations room. They get a bad rap, but the stagnicity that can happen within an operations team or a team in general can really be a downfall for a company. It can limit growth. It can limit opportunity or new places that they can be going in the market. It can make them to where even if they don't limit it, that they're later on the playing field than the rest of everybody else because they didn't see it coming. Um, so really embracing that energy, I feel.
You hit it on the head, right? We get caught in our bubble, right? We're servicing clients and we're focusing on them. How do we improve our client experience on that side? And our operations team is really focused on that piece itself. And typically it's like a little bit of blinders
Hmm.
on with that, and we're not seeing what's out there. Whereas our salesperson is going to networking events. They're going and listening to maybe presentations in our target industry to kind of saturate that, and they're hearing things that are going on, and they can help us. Like I think you said it best, is challenge the way we're thinking and really know what the prospect is looking for in the market today.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one that even to this day, like kind of sat with me that we struggled with for a very long time. And it was the efficiencies of closing tickets uh, when we couldn't get a hold of end users, right? So in our mind, operations, you close it after a certain time, but we just kept on getting this repeated comments from both our account management and our salespeople about how that was something that was rubbing wrong for a lot of clients, and that's what led them back to the resales room. Why our account manager, our salespeople were getting in front of them in the first place, and it really challenged us. And to this day, like we, just that was a continual struggle of is how do you meet people when they're busy and they're not in front of their desks and they're doctors and they're whatever, with that ticket resolution time. But I'm glad that we never just closed off and said, oh, well, can't do anything about it moving forward, right? Because that's when the stagnicity happened. We continue to open, but also we're not going to throw out the operational handbook altogether just because now it's, that's why people are in the market. But I think that's the balance that you have to find is here's a struggle that's happening out there, but this is also operationally a place that we need to move forward to.
Yeah,
It's
it spawns conversation, change,
yes,
growth, really just different, like you said, different ideas.
yes, exactly. Creativity,
Excellent.
innovation,
Yeah.
all comes in that setting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. That helps us grow.
Exactly.
So Sarah, this has been wonderful. Great conversation between us here. You brought some great insights to our listeners. Any tips or last minute pointers you would give to, sales managers, owners out there around building and leading sales teams?
Oh gosh. I think that just in general, it really depends on the type of personality that you are. Don't be afraid to really look at those conversion metrics and make sure that there's like real hard conversation with them, right? But this is a team that you are going to have to work collaboratively, get feedback from them about your marketing stance, about your target client persona. They want to help build and form it, but also just having that energy that what they're saying matters, what they're hearing matters, what they're doing matters. I just really feel like there was so much energy for me off of that. I also feel like just leaning into that disruptive space a little bit and saying, hey, that feels uncomfortable. Let's explore that is definitely this is the room for that. That this is the management for that.
Fantastic. I think we leave on that note itself. Couldn't have said it better. So thank you so much for being on the Results Selling Framework podcast. Love to have you back in the future and bring some more insight to our listeners here.
So fun. Thanks for having me. It's good chatting with you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you. Continue to be the badass catcher that you learned to be, right?
That's right.
So excellent. Thanks again, Sarah.
Thank you.
What a great session with Sarah. Some great knowledge brought upon us around leading salespeople. I say it a lot when I'm coaching partners. The foundations you set before they get there are so vital. That sales playbook. What's your purpose? What's your culture? Who are you selling to? Who's your target client? What what problems do we solve for that industry? How do we sell, right? What's our sales process? All these things are super important to have in place. How are you going to onboard this salesperson, right? We didn't even get into that one. But all these things set up an experience for the success of salespeople you hire today and into the future. In leadership, it's our job to hire the right people, provide them a culture of inclusion, energize and excite them to be part of the team, feel like they're part of the family, right? And let them be heard and openly provide ideas, to help improve our business, right? This applies to our salespeople as well, right? Let's not isolate them into a little bucket. I've been there. I've felt like that before in certain situations I was in. A sales leader is there to help their salespeople grow, to get to know who they are personally and professionally, to help them reach their sales goals, enhance their sales skills, and to be successful, to help them and our company win new business. That's why you're hiring them. So having weekly one-on-ones, you heard that right, weekly one-on-ones with that salesperson. And then when you have a sales team, have weekly sales team meetings for training and role play. That is super vital. You heard Sarah say that. If you're an owner or sales manager of an MSP and you need help developing this, please contact me. We can chat around this and start talking around our sales coaching platform to put these things in place to manage and lead our salespeople to be successful for our business. Join me in December when I have Jeremy Nelson on the show to discuss sales goals and planning to get new managed service clients in 2025. Let's start 2025 right by joining me in December so that way we can launch into the new year ready to achieve and tackle the goals we have for our companies. Thanks again for tuning into the Results Selling Framework podcast. We'll see you next month. Thanks again for tuning into the Results Selling Framework, the podcast, and I got to do that again. There's some bloopers for you.